Sheffield United, I seem to remember quite clearly, um, was the first time that someone really, in my presence at least, someone really went, well, this midfielder does this. And he had defined them in three. Um, at the time, Michael Beale here has um, not developed these personalities, but I guess he's just made them understood. All right, so he's identified five midfielder personalities. Okay, the certain amount of context is that it's in a 4-3-3 system. Okay, but pretty comfortably say that um, these will be understood independent of formation as well. Right, so there's certain midfielders who have the attributes that make them a certain type of midfielder. Right, now, this is quite common knowledge, and especially with midfielders, because we're quite happy to identify um, defensive destroying midfielders. We all know the difference between Busquets and Xavi, or um, Jordan Henderson and Kevin De Bruyne. Right? We all understand that there's differences and attributes between them. What Michael Beale has done here, and I think quite neatly, to be fair, he's categorized these into five. So you have your energizer, right? Your Jordan Henderson or whoever else that might come to your mind. Some players who get around the pitch. They're the ones that he's put some examples in here actually. Wijnaldum, Sissoko, Declan Rice. Okay, the ones that would run about. Now you might disagree slightly with some of these. But that again, we're going to talk about opinion and data in a moment. Right, then you have your De Bruyne, your Verrattis, your Locatellis, who are passers. Right, they'll play that final pass. They'll look for that final pass. You have your magicians. Okay, so the ones that play off the back of people that are really, really good positionally in terms of the positions they take up, the little blind spots they find, and then the technical bits to find teammates and so on. Then you have your spider, which I love because I love that he's used that word spider, because it's a term I've used for midfielders when I've worked abroad, when I've worked in second language places around what a spider is. It's like a distributor, like a spider in the middle of the web that's just connecting everything. So he's put in here, he put it Busquets, Jorginho, Toni Kroos, great examples there, to be fair. And then you've got your destroyers. Your Kante, he's putting Kante, Casemiro, Thomas Delaney in there. All right, now again, we could argue that, well, Kante is a destroyer, but he's got a bit more about him than that. So again, they're not limited. Please don't start to think that these players are now limited to what we call them, right? They just have a different. If we were to give, if you take a midfield player, you take Bernardo Silva. I've landed on Bernardo Silva, but it's probably not a great example because he is quite multifunctional. Bernardo Silva, for example, but you take Phil Foden, right? And Phil Foden is a very good passer of the ball, right? Phil Foden, you will see play with energy. Phil Foden, you could put Phil Foden in there and he would not look out of place. Over 20 games, he might, but in functional terms, he wouldn't, all right? And maybe this would be the lowest percentage. So if you had an all-round midfielder, it would look 20%, 20%, 20, 20, 20, right? That makes up the 100%, right? A Phil Foden might be, I don't know, 70% magician, and then we start to carve up the rest of his game. So none of these players are void of the other profiles or personalities, all right? It's just where they're kind of sat. What's interesting, and we're going to look at this in a little while, is that you look at any of these players really that Michael's put on there, and you will say, well, wow, well, they're actually, they themselves as individuals are a lot different. All right, so Frankie De Jong and Phil Foden and Bernardo Silva, those three, for example, are really quite different to each other in many respects. right? So that there's another layer again we can go into in terms of classifying and looking at profiles as well. Okay. So I mentioned a few minutes ago about opinion and data, right? So I believe that this is opinion, right? I'm not saying that that means it's wrong. I'm just saying is that he's profiled them based on his eyes and his gut, and what he sees and what he feels, right? What the Athletic did is they did the exact same thing with all the outfield positions, but used data.